you at when this happened?
Well, it's kind of funny because it's a cool little hole in the wall downtown Calgary. It's like downstairs. It's perfect for comedy, man.
Awesome.
So the show was packed, sold out. It was so great, and I wound up doing something, and you're well aware of this, something that I never do, right? Is I sat down and drank beer with the audience afterwards.
Good for
right?
you.
And you're well aware. I'm
you.
very antisocial.
No. As soon as the show's over, you're gone.
I seem like this big extrovert, and then as soon as the show's done, I'm like, what if people talk to me? I got to get out of here, right?
I got another show in 10 minutes down the road. Straight to bed.
But I was wearing my Jays Hawaiian shirt,
I love that
my
shirt.
show shirt, my prized possession, yes.
Right.
And
for birthdays and Christmas parties, of course.
Yes, exactly. For all the high-end events that I'm at, yeah. I always get such a kick out of people's reaction to this shirt whenever I'm somewhere that isn't Ontario.
Okay.
Because as soon as I'm somewhere that isn't Ontario, I get all these people who are like, man, I love that shirt. The Jays are awesome. You're not a Leafs fan, right? Are you a Leafs fan? Like, it's so funny to me how every single person needs to make sure, like, they love the Jays, but they need to qualify because I hate the Leafs. I'm not a Leafs fan, you know? You had 50 kilometers outside of Toronto, and that's everyone. Right? They're like, well, the Leafs, I shouldn't say that. Ontario's pretty Leaf heavy, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of such a kick to me. Every time I perform in Alberta, I'm wearing something Jays. Everyone's, I love the Jays, but also, like, you're not.
You're not a Leafs guy, are you? That's good.
Yeah. All right, buddy, let's get into this here.
All right, you're good to get going. I just, again,
we're
rolling. Yeah.
Okay.
Course.
Well, at least I'm not giving all my pot secrets away here, so that's
no.
Good.
You're good.
All right. Well, let's start. Welcome, everybody, to the Walk-Off. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Scott Belford, joined, as always, by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk-Off Podcast, on the Instagram, the Walk-Off Podcast. I just called it the Instagram there, buddy.
Yeah,
Nothing
the
makes me sound
Facebook,
older than that,
the internet, yeah.
The weed.
The weed, yeah.
Really leaning into my age.
Yeah.
And of course we're on TikTok as well. Thank you so much to everyone who our audio downloads, by the way, continue to go up, and we've seen a huge increase in the last couple months. So thank you to everyone who has been audio-wise hitting that subscribe button and leaving a rating. Our ratings are great right now, so thank you so much to everyone, and of course all of you on YouTube continuing to subscribe and hit that click for the views. It is much appreciated. All right, so a few teases before we get into this. We are going to go over Charlie Montoyo, and he has 1 year left on his contract. MLB squelches the Montreal Tampa Bay split, and we talk Robo Umps, all coming up on the show. Also, by the way, next week we have a very special guest joining us, Joe Siddle, former MLB catcher. Man behind the scenes on Baseball Central. Of course, co-host with Jamie Campbell. Campbell was on the show in December, so I sent Joe a message the other day being like, hey, Jamie Campbell came on. What do you think, buddy?
Love it.
So that's pretty cool. We'll be interviewing him on Wednesday, and then we also are going to be doing our movie review. Correct? Mr. Baseball is January's movie.
Correct. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I've purchased it on iTunes, and I am ready to roll.
Lovely. I'll need to do the same. I know I was trying to find it, and I was like, dang it, I'm going to need to buy this. Okay, gang, let's do it. We're going to start with Charlie Montoyo. Contract ends end of 2022. And I mean, everything on the manager front in Toronto has obviously been quiet over the offseason, as it should be, right? Fans and media alike are pretty certain no matter what happens in 2022, Charlie is the guy. I do find this scenario kind of interesting because it does remind me of a scene from Moneyball, right? And Art Howe, the manager of the A's, goes to Brad Pitt, to Billy Beane, and he says something along the lines of, I can't go on managing under the cloud of a one-year contract. A one-year contract means that you have very little faith in me as a manager. And it's an interesting take, and it is kind of true, especially after we just watched Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro get their extension, they're
Right.
back on board for another 5 years within the Toronto Blue Jays organization. So they're as safe as any front office out there. The same cannot be said for Charlie. Now, obviously, he's been the manager since 2018. Last year, a great season. No one predicted the Jays would win 91 wins, even though we were just one win short of an actual playoff appearance.
I certainly
Still,
don't think anyone predicted that in the middle of August.
no,
That
for
team was
sure.
going.
Exactly.
Good little run in September really inflated those win totals at the end of the year.
Do you think it's safe to say 2022 is legitimately do or die for Charlie?
I know where you're going with this. I don't know. I guess. Yeah,
okay,
but I also wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't.
Let's spin this. Then. Let's eliminate the do or die aspect of it. What, in your opinion, does Charlie Montoyo need to pull off to get an extension at the end of 2022?
Okay, that's, I guess, better framed. I would say if the Jays miss the playoffs, he's gone.
Absolutely.
Whether they win 90
Agreed,
games
100%.
or 95 games and it's just a fluky, weird division, shortened season, whatever the case may be, if they miss the playoffs, he's gone. Gotta be, right? Because we're in the playoff window now, right? We were approaching it until last year. Now we're in it. We're here. We should be contending. And he's just the easiest, obvious piece to get rid of, right? When you got to do something drastic, but not too drastic, we're not going to say, okay, well, the Bo and Vlad thing isn't working out. Let's get rid of them, right? We're not going to do that.
Yes.
So I'd say the roster pretty well secured. He's that piece of like, well, look at the toys we've given you to play with and you still can't get it done. We got to find someone who can. We can't wait for 3 years for you to figure out how to be a manager, I guess.
Now, obviously, this is all speculation. But what are your thoughts on what if they expand the playoffs? Let's say, and I'm just throwing 12 out there, 12 teams as a number. So one more team is going to make the playoffs in each conference, in each league.
Right. Does making the playoffs save his job? Is that what you're getting at?
The Jays make the playoffs, lose in a one-game wild card or in that first round, however they set up that first round.
Right.
What do you do if listen, I know we can't actually predict what Atkins and Shapiro do, but if you, Adam Mack, are in charge of the Toronto Blue Jays and they get eliminated in the first round, do you stick with Charlie?
If they lose in the first round, I'm buying him a plane ticket that doesn't lead back to Toronto.
Yes. Okay. I feel the same way.
He's not flying back with the team after that loss, if that's the case.
And I don't even dislike Charlie. Like, I know there is a lot of people in the Blue Jays fandom that maybe aren't the biggest Charlie fans. I wouldn't call myself a fan, but I'm also not a detractor. You know, like I've never been a guy who is putting him under the microscope for every little bullpen move he's made. Yes, every manager makes mistakes. That said, I'm also not a huge Charlie fan, you know? Like, he doesn't inspire a ton of confidence that he's running a tight ship in that clubhouse.
Look, I think both of us are what we would describe as big believers in Shapiro and Atkins, right?
Yes.
We do not have the same level of enthusiasm or confidence in Charlie Montoyo. Is that the simplest way of putting it?
I would say so. In fact, the reason I'm even on board with Charlie is because I trust the front office.
Right, exactly. No, I would say regardless of what size playoffs we have, a first round exit, goodbye.
I'm almost at the point where, like, if they don't go to the ALCS, I'm personally done with Charlie. I don't know if management would be, but if they don't go to the championship series,
that's where I'm a little more hesitant. Like, I feel like if they win the wild card round, they get to the division series, they have a tough break against the Red Sox or whoever, and they're out. I would be open depending on a lot of variables of like, well, how did it play out? How did it get there?
And
were
that's
there
very
injuries
true.
involved? Were they close games? Was it just ugly? Did the team look like lazy and tired out there. You know, like that sort of stuff for me in the divisional round, if we exit, is like, okay, well, there's some factors. But if it's before
That's a great point
I don't
about
care
injuries.
what the factors are. I don't care what the factors are.
Yeah.
If we're leaving in the first round, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
That's my level. And then beyond
that.
But
if they lose... I like that. If they lose in the division series, because of Vladdy tears a ACL, knocking on wood, we're just throwing out.
We're just gonna edit that.
I should have used a different name, but yeah. But no, you're right. Like if it's an injury thing that Charlie has zero say over, I think you do need to give some leeway. But I'm with you. If it's a first round exit,
and then if they go deep in the playoffs, I guess, yeah, you leave them around. You say, let's give them
you have to, right? Like, if they go to the World Series or the ALCS, like, how do you fire Charlie? I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on here. I don't know if everyone who's watching, probably a lot of you did, because anyone who's tuning in right now is obviously a baseball fanatic. We're in the middle of a lockout in January, so congratulations to you. But maybe there are a few of you who didn't get a chance to read Shai Davidi's latest big read. And basically the whole premise of this article is about extending Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero, and that now is the time to do so. And honestly, it was such a fantastic read. Shai Davidi is such a great writer and friend of the show. He's always been very generous with his time here on the walk-off, and he did an extreme deep dive into what this would take. And we're not just going to regurgitate everything he said. You can feel free to read that. That's Shai Davidi's big read. But he did say, like, he brought up all the comparables and floating ideas on what it would take. The one thing that really got my attention in this article that I hadn't even really thought about is, how do you extend both of these guys without stepping on one of their toes?
Right.
Bo and Vlad have been coming up the ranks together for almost half a decade. Mm-hmm. They've been buds since they were 17 and 18 years old. Yeah. They're formative years, and some of the biggest growth as a human takes place from 17 to 25, right? So these guys are literally not just growing as ball players, but as human beings together. And you can just tell by when the camera's on them that they're genuinely really close. They're genuinely friends. Their comradeship and their drive is so tied together. And they've gone through so many of the same hurdles, being sons of Major League ball players, at least all-stars, right? Like, even though Dante never got to the Hall, you know, he was also an exceptional ball player. So I don't see either of them wishing to be the first guy to sign. And this was one thing that Shai brought up that was really interesting, is how do you get these two to lock in with the Jays long term? And the one thing he floated was twin contracts, right? Sitting these guys. Now, I think Bichette, so if you're going to do twin contracts, where you're literally going to sit both of them down and be like, all right, gentlemen, we've got $600 million that we're prepared to spend on you two. You're splitting it? You know, like, yeah. I think before you start talking about Bichette in that $300 million range, in that Carlos Correa range, I think you need to give it another half a season.
Okay.
Bo has played fewer games than Vladdy. Bo,
you know, just to stop you right there, the convenient thing is we may get half a season in 2022.
Yeah.
Sorry, lockout joke, bad taste. Continue.
No, I'm just saying that I think that we could see these two gentlemen buddy up and kind of force the Jays' hand into talking to both of them about a mega contract. And Shai even said he could be wrong, and maybe we are too, thinking that, you know, friendship and the idea of this goes before money. Obviously, it probably doesn't. But I wonder if there is something to be said for sitting these two down and being like, we're prepared to commit to both of you big time. And this is one thing, and I know you and I have brought this up before, we've compared Bo and Vladdy to Sean Green and Carlos Delgado. And one of the biggest reasons that Green left, and you can actually go back through our conversations if you're curious to hear what Sean Green had to say about being traded to the Dodgers back in the day. One of the reasons he left Toronto was he didn't feel like they could lock him and Delgado up, and he did not wish to be in Toronto and watch his best friend and the guy who came up the system with him just go elsewhere. So he went to the big money Dodgers and chased a ring there. So
yeah, no, that's the exact comparison here is that that Delgado and Sean Green duo. I don't think the Jays need to see another half season out of Bo Bichette.
Maybe you're right. Maybe he's proven himself to be a $300 million guy. He did have the most hits in baseball last year. And on top of it, he said he felt like he didn't find his swing until 3/4 way through the season, and he still hit 300 with just under 30. What was it, like 29 home runs and 27 stolen bases? Something like that, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
he plays almost every day. I think he was at 160 games played, I think.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like Bo as a shortstop, and I was one of them going into last season. He showed me enough last year, progress-wise, development-wise. I mean, we could keep waiting, but the price tag is just going to keep going up, man.
Yeah, I do feel that way. I do feel that way, too. The price tag is going to keep going up. But we'll move on. But I will bring up here, and you kind of pointed this out to me last week, Adam, was some of the people online and their idea of what we can sign Vlad for is just so hilarious. Out to lunch.
Like 4 years.
What was the one you mentioned? Yeah, 4 years, $100 million. Like, what? Why would you even do that as a Blue Jay?
Why
like, as the organization
printing that contract out?
Yeah,
like, why?
Because he's a J for the next 4 years, anyways. Yeah. So if you're just gonna sign him for 4 years and give him way more money than he would get anyways, and then let him walk, like, that's crazy, right?
Yeah. No,
I think the only way you see an extension on these guys is if they're mega deals and they're 10-year plus and they commit to them for the majority of their career.
One thing you did say though with Shy is like, he could be wrong, right?
Yes.
But one little tidbit that I've picked up from our chats with him, and Arden Zwelling has said the same thing. They have a very good working relationship with this front office. And a lot of stuff gets said off the record that then they use to form their opinion pieces.
Yes.
That makes them sound, really smart when 6 months later, that's what happens.
It happens, exactly.
So, could he be wrong? Sure, but I also feel like he wouldn't be saying this for no reason. Right? So as he had a chat with someone in that front office, ask them the question about, like, so what the hell are we going to do with these two? What's the plan, right? Like, because they have to have a plan, right? Like,
that was my first thought, buddy. That was my first thought when I read about that twin contracts, is I'm like, I don't know if Shy's just coming up with this off the top of his head. This is something he's probably heard whispers of,
sure,
right?
He's had a beer with one of them or both of them, and Shapiro and or Atkins, and that's come up, right? It's like, yeah, we might just have to do this, and that's so I don't know. I think where there's smoke, there's fire when it comes to anything Shy writes. So interesting to watch, but it's definitely, I would say, more credible and less speculation than the two yahoos over at the walk-off might dream up. So, anyways,
yes. Thank you, Adam.
Let's move on.
While we brought up Carlos Correa, I did wish to quickly touch on the fact that he is now the newest member of the Boris Corporation, joining the many other high-end free agents who have jumped ship to Scott Boras in their contract year. Kind of weird he did it midway through the lockout. Yeah. However, you were saying that this is because of his old...
Yeah. Can you just stall for me while I look up his old agency just so I'm naming the right...
Absolutely. Now, Scott Boras is infamous for poaching clients. So this is not something new. In fact, the biggest knock on Scott Boras in the industry is that he puts very little time and effort into true development in his clients. He winds up with the clients who are already big money guys looking for the biggest contract. He's not an agent that helps groom these young men throughout systems, helping them as they go level by level, and then gets his payday when they finally become everyday major league players and get a contract. Scott Boras lets all the other guys do the work, and then he comes in and he poaches with the promise of big money contracts, which he has delivered time and time again.
So he is not holding their hand through arbitration, through their draft process and everything like that.
All the low money stuff agents do, Scott Boras has nothing to do with.
And it's a funny chicken or the egg situation when it comes to that, because now that he's established himself as the money guy, that reputation is just what continues to perpetuate that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Carlos Correa was with the William Morris agency.
Right, William Morris, right.
William Morris Endeavor was the agency he was with. So they got in trouble with the MLB, I guess, earlier this week, as they have purchased 10 minor league baseball teams, which the MLB views as some sort of conflict of interest, and they're actually
big time.
They're
like
the MLB is.
I'm no lawyer, but it seems like a pretty huge conflict of interest. Yes.
So the MLB is moving to have them basically decertified as MLB
as
agents, right? Which is, I guess, would be
why Carlos obviously jumped ship. Yes.
Right. So my understanding now is that the William Morris Endeavor is looking to the courts to block this move by Correa to leave being poached by
Boras Corp.
Obviously, like with a $300 million contract coming his way at 5%, that's a $15 million hit that they're taking on. I guess you'd have to assume they were banking on at this point.
Yeah.
Up until earlier this week, right? Was that
yeah.
An inevitable $300, if not $400 million contract was coming his way, and in return, 15 to 20 million inevitably coming their way.
Agreed. Of all the free agents in this 2022 class that are still remaining, buddy, I am just so freaking curious as to what Carlos Correa gets. Like, is he going to hit 400 million?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Because I feel like almost for sure, we talked last on the mailbag, we talked about the salary cap floor.
Yes, the floor.
Being discussed as an option to be introduced. Whether or not that gets approved, whether or not the luxury tax, which is essentially a salary cap, takes on a more formal salary cap terminology, whatever the case may be, money being spent on players has to go up in this next CBA, right?
Yeah.
There's
no way around it.
I can't imagine, no matter what concessions the MLB comes up with, the players are not going to agree to anything that results in less money in the players' hands, right? Especially with the talk of like expanded playoffs and everything like this. Like, if there's more revenue coming in, players are going to get a bigger piece of that. So with that being said, I just don't understand how he wouldn't get more money than what Marcus Semien got, what Seager got. Like,
yeah. Like, that's the thing, right? Is if Corey Seager's getting $325 million over 10 years, Correa has to be close to 400.
Yeah.
Right? Like, logistically, if you're just going over the numbers and you're just looking at the analytics, Correa is by far the superior shortstop.
I think after that Seager contract, I feel like regardless of the CBA, even if it wasn't like pre and post CBA negotiations, he's still 350 compared to Seager,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So we're only talking about an increase of 50 million.
2 years.
Add 2 years, make it a 12-year deal, 400 million. Sure. Right?
Like
Instead
Correa
of 10
is
years, 35.
Can you do a quick Google of his age? I think he's 26, but he might be 27. Either way, 12 years means that whoever goes after Correa he's going to be a member of that team for the rest of his career.
He is 27 as of September 22nd. So next year will be his
So he is still 26.
No, he's 27.
For most of the season. Oh, he's 27 now.
27,
turns 28. Okay, right. Yes. I get it. Yeah.
But he'll be 27 for essentially the entire season.
Right. So a 12-year deal puts him at 39. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the man gets. We'll move on here. News coming out, I think it was yesterday. I could be wrong. It might have been Wednesday. But the MLB has officially said no way Jose to a Tampa Bay Rays Montreal Expos split. It's almost like it was a terrible idea right from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a little disappointing for baseball fans in Montreal and Canada in general. I truly do think that there is going to be another team in Canada sometime in the next 10 years. It might not even be Montreal. Vancouver is also a great market, a great baseball market in this country. The idea of the split, I think, truly was just the Rays trying to use this as leverage. And it wasn't a real idea. And I think once it started to get into the wheels and the cogs turning of it becoming into a real idea, MLB stepped in and was like, okay, no.
I also think the timing is funny with this announcement. Like officially quelching the idea. We're all anticipating the MLBPA reveals their counter proposal in CBA negotiations next week. Mm-hmm. This is something that maybe is just like the owners don't want to have that factor into the MLBPA.
Just one more thing for them to deal with.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, if we're going to have players splitting time between these two cities, like, okay, we'll do that. But then in return, we're going to need, more favorable arbitration system or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's just another bargaining chip. And if the MLB really didn't want to do that anyways, let's just...
Which, who would?
No, who would, right? Other than the Rays owner. But
yes.
But let's just eliminate that right now so we don't even have to make a trade in negotiations. Let's just take it off the table and eliminate that as a possible source of arguing. Mm-hmm. It's a stupid idea. Like, regardless of the rest of the situation, having a sister city system is
as a player, you would hate it, right? You would hate it.
Yeah. I don't think that. I don't think any teams are going to be relocating within the next 5-10 years because I think the MLB has its eyes set on expansion.
Yes.
So, like, there's talks of the A's moving to Las Vegas and the, Rays moving to Montreal. No, like, those are two markets that could potentially be a $3 or $4 billion expansion team, right? Like, Vegas wants teams. They would just...
Make them pay the full expansion price. Just make them pay a full
expansion, and now we have a 31-team league. Or like,
I mean, we just watched the NHL go from 30 to 32 teams in the last few years, adding the Kraken, obviously, and the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah. I think baseball's prime for an expansion over the next 10 years, and I think you're nailing it here with the prediction of there won't be any movement. Tampa, I think, is still a bubble team, but they're kind of the Phoenix Coyotes of the MLB. It's like they've been a bubble team since they pretty much have been there. Like,
right. And I don't think anybody moves at least until Las Vegas is an expansion team.
Yes.
Right. I think you just, if Oakland really needs out of Oakland, you wait till Vegas expands, pays their expansion fee, and then you let Oakland relocate to Vancouver, Calgary, or
Calgary. Yes.
Throw a third team in New York. What do I know? Right, Buffalo.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a dumb idea. I think I'm kind of relieved to.
It's not the way I would want to. Yeah, like it's not the way I would want to see baseball come back to Montreal.
No, not at all.
It feels like they'd be limping, limping back to Montreal. Yeah. Like it just, yeah. So as great as it would be. Sorry, go ahead. I was
going to end with one question about a Vancouver Rays team. What would Rogers name their new ballpark? I mean, they have, 6 pro stadiums in Canada now, all named after Rogers? There's the center, there's stadium, there's arena. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would anybody else be in on that, though, to own a team in Canada? Other than Rogers?
I mean, no. I don't think they'd allow Rogers to own another team, right? It's kind of a conflict of interest if I've ever heard of it. But
I know, but there's always creative. Well, we'll just make it a Shaw company then, and it's like, okay, but Shaw's owned by Rogers, and
I mean, yeah, there's ways they could probably get around it, but there's lots of money in Canada, and I think there's lots of guys who might be interested in bringing a team to a Vancouver or a Montreal, so I don't think you need Rogers.
Well, hey,
but let's move on.
Bell owns the Leafs, right? And they've got TSN, so if that's their other sports network, I mean, there's 162 programs a year.
That's right.
Throw on TSN.
Get in on baseball, TSN. Right. Robo Umps. Let's get into it, buddy.
Sure.
This is breaking news recently that AAA has officially decided to go with Robo Umps. So they have been experimenting with this over the last couple of years. I know that they gave it a shot in Low A in 2019. I'm well aware they've been doing this in the Atlantic Independent League for the last couple of years. It is now going to be in a MLB high affiliate league in AAA. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Now, I know there's going to be... So, to start with, let's hear what you're thinking, Adam, on your end.
Well,
this is inevitable, right? We've talked about this. This is inevitable.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, there are genuine pros and cons to both sides of the argument, right? There are concerns that we'll get into with complications that arise. But for sure, this feels like it's inevitable at this point. This is no longer an experiment. Let's try it out. This is, no, it's coming, and we're just going to work out the kinks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're doing.
And there are kinks. There's definitely kinks. Yeah. I know one of the biggest one has been that they've had a real tough time having the strike zone high enough, right? Because you look at the box, and obviously from an umpire standpoint, that low strike isn't being called, right? It's considered just, I don't know if it's just the human eye. It looks lower, but a lot of low strikes are being called that aren't normally called with these robot umps. So I'm not sure how they calibrate this to kind of fix that problem. Another concern that I would have is this transition period. How much is it going to mess with the development of these AAA pitchers who are all of a sudden learning how to recalibrate their own strike zone around this robo strike zone and then get called up to the majors in, let's say, June, and all of a sudden they're not used to adapting on the fly, umpire to umpire, strike zone to strike zone.
Well, I mean,
could be a problem.
I mean, it's kind of it cuts both ways, right? Like on the one hand, you've got a guy who maybe makes his bread and butter off of painting the corners, right? And now potentially is going to miss out on a bunch of strike calls that, were close, but now are a fraction of an inch outside and don't count. But then the other hand is like, you're also going to get the guys who weren't getting those calls before that now are. So,
yes.
I don't know. I do feel for the guys who are the 4A minor leaguers who are going to be up and down all season, whether they're pitchers or hitters.
Yes, it's going to be a pain.
Adjusting to wildly different strike zones.
Yes.
From one thing to the next. Are we going to see a resurgence of Kevin Biggio now that we have Robo Umps?
I say yes. I like to hear that, buddy. Yes.
We did get a comment there on our last mailbag. It was funny. It was like, I love how every time you guys talk about an example of a quote-unquote average hitter, Kevin Biggio is the name that you guys use. Like, I guess we know who won't be a guest on the show. And let me just say, average Major League Baseball hitter is a fucking compliment.
Oh, man.
Like,
do you know how many average Major League Baseball hitters there are? Like, not many.
No, there's like 15. Like, you're either
Yeah.
top 15 in your position or you're...
Yeah, or you're not.
Anyways, below average Major League hitter is a compliment, okay? There are
Yes,
not many of them.
Indeed.
All right.
Okay, anything else to add there? I just want to talk Yadi Molina before we wrap this up.
Let's talk Molina, sure.
Okay. So, listen, I know we're in an era in baseball where analytics reign supreme. I've even said it myself. The actual numbers matter, right? The actual numbers matter, and almost always the fringe stuff doesn't. That said, when it comes to Yadi Molina, I think you got to throw the numbers right out of the window. Okay, so friend of the show and Blue Jays Twitter savant, Lewis Foster, he was actually helping us with some stuff earlier in the year, doing some video cutting and stuff like that for us. Really smart baseball dude, 16 years old. And he was commenting on, so there was another fan that created this listing of catchers from around the league. And he broke them into categories, and the categories were superstar, all-star, good, average, below average, and trash.
Okay.
And the fan who made this had Yadi Molina in the good category. And Lewis commented on which catchers he thinks are ranked too high. Yadi Molina was one of the guys that he named as ranked too high.
Okay.
And honestly, every other guy on the list that Lewis brought up was ranked too high. And Lewis is an incredibly smart baseball fan, but he's 16. Now, Yadi Molina has been playing Major League Baseball for 19 years. Molina's career is 3 years older than our good friend Lewis.
His career is old enough to drink.
Yes, his career is old enough to drink in Canada. Anyways. The intangibles, like I mentioned earlier, can normally be cut right through with analytics. But when you're talking a legend like Yadi Molina, the intangibles are real. Yeah. What he is doing for the Cards pitching staff, even if his stats are all below average, is unquantifiable.
Yeah.
They're learning from literally one of the greatest catchers to ever call a game, to ever suit up and play catcher. One of the greatest ever. This is a guy who's going to make the Hall of Fame. This is a guy who's going to make the Hall of Fame first ballot.
I'd have to agree with you.
And I know that the new generation of baseball fans, and I love this about the new generation of baseball fans, the young fans coming up, like Lewis, are super in touch with the numbers. Way more so than the last generation of ball fans. But again, in the case of Yadi, I think he's one of the few guys that you throw the numbers out. He's kind of like Albert Pujols, right? It's like having another coach on the team.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No. Where do you think Albert Pujols plays next year? Just on a total side note before we leave.
If there's a salary floor, Pittsburgh?
Can you imagine seeing him hit 700 in Pittsburgh?
Oh,
That would sell some tickets, wouldn't it?
heck yeah, it would. Baltimore? Like, that's the thing. We are going to see some teams make some signings that they would never do if there is a salary floor. And I know we talked about that on the mailbag on Wednesday, but a salary floor would be interesting to see what some of these tanking teams do.
I mean, I think best case scenario for Pittsburgh is they sign Albert Pujols. He gets to $6.99 right away. Like, comes out of the gates hot. And then
hits 10 home runs in April.
Yeah, and then everybody's buying tickets, waiting for number 700, and then he just slumps for the next 4 months and doesn't hit another one until September. So.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
Hey, always a pleasure. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. We do appreciate the viewership. Again, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you have yet to do so. If you're a YouTube fan of our podcast, we really thank you. And if you wanted to do a little extra help for us, it would be great if you went on to our audio side of things and just hit subscribe. It helps with the numbers and all that good stuff. You don't even have to listen.
It just helps with our numbers.
Yeah. All right, gang. We'll talk to you on the mailbag on Tuesday. And again, we're bringing Joe Siddle on the show on Wednesday. All the best, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.